The art of decision. Thinking like Machiavelli in the modern world. Every day, we make decisions that shape our lives, some tiny, some enormous. We choose careers, partners, investments, or even what to say in a tense conversation. And more often than not, we hesitate. We get caught in loops of overthinking, waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect clarity that never comes. Yet history's most decisive figures, generals, innovators, and leaders, rarely waited. They moved with speed, precision, and confidence, even when information was incomplete. What if you could do the same? What if you could make better decisions faster, not recklessly, but intelligently, strategically, almost artfully? This is where Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance political thinker so often misunderstood as cold or manipulative, becomes surprisingly relevant. Beneath his reputation for cunning lies a mind obsessed with reality, strategy, and decisive thinking. He wasn't teaching people how to deceive. He was teaching them how to see clearly, think critically, and act effectively under pressure. His insights can be reimagined as a kind of mental operating system for fast, clear decisions in today's uncertain, fast-paced world. If you're watching this video, we'll uncover what I call Machiavelli's laws for critical thinking. These aren't dusty philosophical theories. They're living tools, mindsets that can help you stop overanalyzing, start moving, and master the rare skill of deciding well and fast. Let's begin with the first law, the foundation of all others, knowing the ground. Law 1. Know the ground, reality first. Before a ruler acts, Machiavelli insists he must understand the verita effettuale delle cose, the effectual truth of things. In simple terms, face reality as it is, not as you wish it were. For modern decision makers, this is revolutionary advice. Too often, we make choices based on assumptions, hopes, or idealized scenarios instead of grounding our thinking in what's actually happening. When you make a decision from fantasy, you invite failure. When you make it from facts, you build power. This law starts with a brutal kind of honesty, with yourself, your team, and your situation. If you're launching a business, know your real numbers, not your dream projections. If you're navigating a relationship, see the actual patterns of behavior, not the promises. In practice, this means gathering just enough information to see the landscape clearly. Who are the players? What are the constraints? What is the worst-case scenario you can survive? What are the best-case opportunities worth the risk? Clarity like this shortens indecision dramatically because it cuts away the fog of illusion. Machiavelli would say that decision paralysis comes not from ignorance, but from unexamined illusions. The entrepreneur who keeps revising a plan instead of launching isn't missing data. They're clinging to a fantasy of certainty. The leader who hesitates to act isn't cautious. They're in denial about what the situation demands. Knowing the ground is about humility, accepting the limits of what you control while mastering what you can. Once you've mapped reality, even roughly, the next step is not to hesitate. It's to move with adaptability. That's where Law 2 begins. Law 2, the virtue of adaptation. In The Prince, Machiavelli introduces one of his most misunderstood ideas, virtù. It doesn't mean virtue in the moral sense. It means strength, skill, and flexibility. The ability to shape fortune rather than be crushed by it. A great leader, he says, must have the virtue to adapt when circumstances shift. Fortuna may control half of life, but the other half depends on how quickly and cleverly you adjust. This is the art of staying fluid in a chaotic world. Modern decision makers face the same challenge. The environment changes, markets crash, technologies evolve, people shift loyalties. If you cling to one plan, one mindset, one perfect decision, you'll break when fortune turns. Adaptability isn't about changing your goal, it's about changing your method when reality changes its rules. The best decision isn't the one that's flawless in theory, it's the one flexible enough to survive in practice. That's the essence of virtue, staying alert, agile, and unshaken when conditions flip. To apply this today, you can build adaptation right into your decisions. When you choose a direction, set checkpoints to reassess. Make partial commitments instead of irreversible ones. Pilot new ideas before scaling them. Think of your decisions as living experiments, not monuments. This allows you to act fast, without fearing that every mistake is fatal. Machiavelli didn't believe in perfect choices. He believed in resilient ones. The real power lies not in always being right, but in learning faster than everyone else. Law 3. Choose the lesser evil when necessary. Machiavelli never sugarcoated the realities of leadership or life. In The Prince, he famously wrote that a ruler must learn how not to be good when circumstances demand it. At first glance, that sounds ruthless, even immoral. But what he meant wasn't cruelty for its own sake, it was clarity under constraint. Every meaningful decision comes with trade-offs, and waiting for a perfect option where nobody loses is a fantasy. When time is short or stakes are high, refusing to decide is often worse than choosing imperfectly. The lesser evil becomes not a compromise of values, but an act of realism. Think about it. Every business leader balancing layoffs to save a company. Every doctor forced to triage in an emergency. Every activist prioritizing which battle to fight. They all face the same moral geometry. You rarely get the luxury of an all-good choice. Machiavelli's advice is to stop pretending otherwise. Instead of wasting energy searching for an impossible ideal, weigh consequences, own your values, and choose the path that protects your larger purpose. In his eyes, hesitation was its own sin, a failure of courage disguised as morality. Applied to modern decision-making, this law is a call to decide anyway. When the pressure mounts, act on the best information you have within a clear time limit. Recognize that the cost of delay often exceeds the cost of imperfection. You can always correct course later, Law 2, but you can't recover the time lost to paralysis. Machiavelli would argue that even a flawed decision executed boldly inspires more confidence and progress than endless indecision masquerading as caution. In fast-moving environments, the lesser evil is often the only realistic path to a greater good. Law 4. The principle of preemption and timing. Timing, to Machiavelli, was everything. He believed fortune favored those who acted before the moment turned against them. In his discourses, he compares fortune to a river. When calm, it can be managed. When flooding, it destroys everything. The wise leader builds levees, acts before disaster strikes. In modern life, this is the principle of preemption, anticipate rather than react. Great decision-makers don't wait for the perfect cue. They sense the shift early, decide fast, and position themselves ahead of the curve. In today's world, timing separates leaders from laggards. Think of innovators who launched early, Netflix moving to streaming before the DVD market collapsed, or Elon Musk betting on electric vehicles when oil still reigned supreme. They weren't always right, but they were early. The same rule applies to personal decisions. Opportunities decay with time. The job offer, the relationship, the investment. The longer you wait, the more fortune moves on. Machiavelli's realism reminds us that hesitation doesn't preserve safety, it simply trades opportunity for regret. Practically, applying this law means developing your instinct for momentum. Learn to recognize signals. When a market's heating up, When a conflict's about to boil, when a team's energy starts to fade, act before the tipping point. Set internal deadlines that force clarity. I'll decide by Friday, not next month. Treat delay as a measurable cost, not a neutral pause. Machiavelli admired leaders who seized the initiative because once you set events in motion, you shape their direction. When you act first, you don't just follow fortune, you bend it. Law 5. Divide the enemy, or the problem, into manageable parts. When Machiavelli advised princes on warfare, he wasn't just talking about armies, he was describing how to think. In both The Prince and The Art of War, he urges rulers to analyze their challenges piece by piece, to divide an overwhelming threat into smaller, solvable components. It's not just a military tactic, it's a cognitive one. When faced with complexity, break it apart until each fragment can be handled decisively. Decision paralysis thrives on the illusion that you must solve everything at once. Machiavelli knew better. Control starts with segmentation. In modern decision-making, this law becomes a form of mental triage. Suppose you're deciding whether to start a company. The total problem feels massive. Product, funding, marketing, hiring, logistics. Instead of drowning in the enormity of it, Machiavellian thinking says, divide it. What are the 3 or 4 questions that truly matter? Is there real demand? Can I fund the first 6 months? Who are my first customers? Once those are answered, the fog begins to lift. This breakdown doesn't just clarify, it accelerates. Smaller problems can be solved faster, and solutions compound. The same applies to emotional or strategic dilemmas. Breaking a problem into parts gives you immediate action points and restores confidence. When you face something big, a crisis at work, a life decision, or a long-term project, your goal isn't to solve everything. It's to identify the pressure points where effort matters most. Machiavelli would tell you that control of even one small part of a complex situation changes the balance of power. Start there, decide there, win there, and the rest begins to follow. Law 6. Prepare for the worst case, aspire for the best. Machiavelli's realism wasn't cynicism, it was protection. He believed that fortune, unpredictable as it is, always tests those who seem unprepared. In The Prince, he warns rulers that a wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men, and to imitate those who have been supreme, meaning they should learn how great leaders built defenses before crises struck. For him, the greatest error wasn't being defeated, it was being surprised. To decide well, one must anticipate adversity, visualize the worst-case scenario, and fortify accordingly. In modern decision-making, this law is pure strategic foresight. Whether you're leading a business, managing finances, or planning your next career step, the key is to stress test your decision before the world does it for you. What if the market crashes? What if your partner quits? What if the product fails? Asking these questions doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you prepared. The point isn't to expect disaster, but to engineer resilience. When you've already thought through your fallbacks, your confidence increases and your reaction time drops to near zero. You move from fear-based hesitation to clarity-based speed. At the same time, Machiavelli never advised living only in fear. Preparation for the worst should enable ambition, not restrict it. Once you know you can survive the storm, you're freer to chase opportunity. Think of it like building a ship with lifeboats. The lifeboats don't to make you timid, they make you fearless enough to sail farther. So before you decide, take 10 minutes to map your failure scenarios and responses. Then, aim high. Go after the upside. That's how you combine prudence with boldness, the balance Machiavelli considered the hallmark of true leadership. Law 7. Control your reputation and narrative. If there's one lesson Machiavelli repeats obsessively, it's this: appearance shapes reality. In his world, power wasn't just about armies or money. It was about perception. Everyone sees what you appear to be, he wrote. Few know what you really are. For a prince, image was strategy. For a modern decision-maker, it's the same. The way you frame your decisions, how confidently, clearly, and consistently you present them, determines how others respond. Your reputation becomes your leverage. In the workplace, in politics, even in personal relationships, decisions don't exist in isolation. They create ripples in how people trust, follow, or challenge you. Machiavelli would tell you that once you've made a decision, your job isn't over. You must own it publicly, communicate it cleanly, explain your reasoning without over-defending. Show conviction, not arrogance. People forgive mistakes faster than they forgive hesitation. The leader who acts and communicates with authority earns loyalty. The one who wavers loses it. In short, your reputation for decisiveness multiplies your influence. To practice this today, think of every decision as a message about who you are. If you decide quickly and wisely, people begin to see you as someone who can decide, and that perception speeds future cooperation. It builds what psychologists call decision momentum. Machiavelli would consider this a virtuous cycle. Reputation fuels confidence, confidence fuels decisive action, and decisive action strengthens reputation. It's not about deception or vanity. It's about alignment. What you appear to be should match what you truly are, someone who can think clearly and act fast when it counts. Law 8. Use feedback loops and learn from mistakes. Machiavelli was not a theorist locked in an ivory tower. He was a relentless observer of real-world cause and effect. In his writings, he analyzes the rise and fall of countless leaders to extract patterns. What worked, what failed, what could have been done differently. That, in essence, is a feedback loop. He was doing post-mortems before the term existed. His mindset wasn't, I must be right, but I must learn faster than others. For him, the failure to reflect was more dangerous than any bad decision. Fast decision-making isn't about being infallible, it's about being iterative. Every decision you make is data. When you assess your choices, what succeeded, what didn't, what surprised you, you refine your instincts. The more cycles you go through, the sharper your intuition becomes. This is how leaders, entrepreneurs, and creatives develop what we call gut feeling. It's not magic. It's learned pattern recognition built through feedback. Machiavelli would argue that only fools repeat their errors. The wise turn mistakes into momentum. To apply this, build feedback into your decision rhythm. After each major choice, run a 5-minute reflection. What went right? What went wrong? What did I misjudge? Did I act too slowly or too fast? Document your insights briefly and use them to adjust your future process. Over time, you'll start noticing themes, biases you fall for, signals you often miss, strengths you can double down on. That's when you stop fearing mistakes entirely, because each one becomes part of your strategic growth. As Machiavelli would say, fortune may test you repeatedly, but only the unreflective are doomed to fail the same test twice. Law 9. Avoid groupthink. Encourage dissent and realism. Machiavelli was surrounded by courtiers, advisors, and power brokers, yet he distrusted consensus. He warned that rulers who surround themselves with flatterers lose the ability to see the truth. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler, he wrote, is to look at the men he has around him. That insight feels just as urgent today, because groupthink remains one of the fastest killers of sound judgment. When everyone in a room agrees too quickly, the truth has probably gone missing. In our modern context, Decision-making often happens in teams, boards, or social circles that prize harmony over honesty. We like people who agree with us. Disagreement feels like friction. But Machiavelli would argue that friction is exactly what sharpens reason. He would tell any leader, invite disagreement and reward it. The best teams aren't those that always agree. They're the ones that disagree productively and decide fast afterward. If everyone is afraid to challenge your thinking, you'll drift into illusion and failure, slowly, politely, fatally. To make better decisions faster, you need deliberate dissent. Before you finalize any major choice, assign someone to play devil's advocate, to find flaws, risks, and blind spots. Ask, what could make this decision go wrong? What am I not seeing? This short, structured pushback prevents costly mistakes later. Machiavelli believed that wise rulers prized honest advisors who spoke freely, even harshly. In modern leadership, that's psychological safety, an environment where truth outranks ego. Fast decisions still need debate, not silence. Law 10. Define clear objectives and metrics. One of Machiavelli's most enduring ideas is that leaders must know their ends before choosing their means. A prince who lacks clarity about what he wants, power, stability, peace, expansion, will waste energy chasing contradictions. He who does not know what he wants cannot command his means, he might say. Translating this into modern decision-making, every decision starts with a question. What am I trying to achieve exactly? Without a clear objective, even smart decisions scatter like arrows shot in different directions. Clarity of purpose doesn't just speed up decision-making, it also cuts through confusion and politics. In a business, when everyone knows the goal, increase retention by 20%, cut costs by 10%, launch by Q3, debate becomes sharper and faster. People argue about how, not what. That precision reduces emotional drag and prevents endless circular discussions. Machiavelli's point wasn't that leaders must be inflexible, but that they must be decisive in aim. The clearer your goal, the easier it is to identify what actions align with it, and what distractions to ignore. To practice this law, define success in measurable terms before you decide. Replace vague aims like make progress with concrete statements like gain 5,000 new users in 3 months. Once your metric is set, evaluate each choice against it. If an option doesn't move you closer to your goal, it's noise. This way, your decision process becomes not just faster, but cleaner. Machiavelli would call this strategic discipline, aligning every move to your larger ambition. In his world, that was survival. In ours, it's effectiveness. Law 11. Act decisively and commit. If there's a single trait Machiavelli admired above all others, it was decisiveness. He despised hesitation. Fortune is a woman, he wrote provocatively, and it is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force. Behind the poetic metaphor lies a practical truth. Opportunity doesn't wait. The moment of decision is perishable, and only those who act with conviction can seize it. To Machiavelli, once you've gathered your facts, weighed your options, and chosen your path, the time for caution is over. Now you must commit. Decisive commitment turns a decision from an idea into a reality. It rallies people, creates momentum, and builds credibility. Even when your choice isn't perfect, full commitment gives it strength. Half decisions, those made timidly or reversed too soon, invite chaos and doubt. Think of a general who gives a command but hesitates mid-battle. The troops falter. The plan collapses. In business, in relationships, in creative work, hesitation kills execution. Machiavelli's wisdom is simple: a decision half made is worse than none at all. To live this law, treat every decision as a public promise. Once you choose, announce it clearly, assign resources, and take immediate action. Monitor results closely, Law 8, and adapt Law 8. But don't vote. Commit, retreat. At deceit, a first sign of difficulty. Commit fully. Difficulty. Commit fully. And adapt later if needed. This balance of decisiveness and flexibility is the essence of Machiavellian thinking. Move fast, act with confidence, and trust your ability to correct course. Decisions gain their power not at the moment of thought, but at the moment of action. Conclusion: the Machiavellian mind. Fast, clear, and fearless. We live in a time where indecision is disguised as intelligence. We overanalyze, overplan, and overweight, and by the time we're ready, the world has already moved on. Machiavelli's genius was in seeing through that illusion 5 centuries ago. He understood that power belongs not to those who think longest, but to those who think clearest and act swiftly. His laws for critical thinking aren't about manipulation, they're about mastery. Mastery of mind, moment, and motion. To make better decisions faster, you don't need supernatural foresight or infinite data. You need what Machiavelli taught: realism, Law 1, adaptability, Law 2, courage to act amid imperfection, Law 3, a sense of timing, Law 4, structured problem-solving, Law 5, resilience, Law 6, command of perception, Law 7, humility to learn, Law 8, openness to dissent, Law 9, clarity of purpose, Law 10, and full commitment, Law 11. Together, these aren't just laws, they're a philosophy of action. When you internalize them, you start thinking like a strategist, not a spectator. You stop waiting for perfect certainty and start playing the game of life like it's meant to be played, with awareness, adaptability, and audacity. Machiavelli's enduring lesson is this: the world rewards those who decide. So when your next crossroads arrives, pause, assess, and then move. Decide fast, decide well, and, like the masters of every age, bend fortune to your will.